Hey there besties. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're continuing our recap of the manhwa, The Cellist. If you're new to this series, check the description below for links to previous episodes. Before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to all our supporters. If you're enjoying the content and want to help keep the channel going, consider buying me a coffee. There's a link in the description below. Every little bit helps, and I appreciate all your love and support. Lastly, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoy the video. It really helps our channel grow. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started. At Kang Ji-seok's home, his wife wept quietly. 68 is too young. How could someone so strong? Her voice cracked as she struggled to accept that stomach cancer had taken him. Across the room, Ji Sehun stared at a framed photo of Kang Ji-seok on the wall, his thoughts elsewhere. "Get out of my life for good," he muttered silently. Suddenly, Kang's wife noticed him. "You!" she shouted, locking eyes with Sehun. "You never came while he was alive." Her voice rose in anger as she rushed towards him. "You show up now, and you don't even acknowledge me? After everything he did for you?" She grabbed his shirt, her grief pouring out as anger. "What kind of person are you?" she demanded. "Please calm down," Miss Lee said softly, trying to soothe her. "How can I calm down? He was so good to him, and look at this ungrateful piece of trash," she yelled before finally letting go of Sehun's shirt. Sehun quietly walked to the donation box, slipping an envelope inside without a word. "What's going on?" someone whispered nearby. "That's Kang's protégé, but they say he cut ties after he made it big," another murmured. "What a jerk," another added, watching from the side. Miss Lee turned to Sehun. "I know that was hard, but showing up was the right thing." "Let's go," Sehun said, avoiding eye contact. Outside the apartment, Hayeon caught up with him. "Sehun, she's just grieving. You get that, right?" he said, patting his back gently. Sehun nodded, walking ahead without responding. As he sat on a nearby bench, Hayeon called out, "Where are you going?" "I'll stay a couple more hours," Sehun replied, sitting down. "That's enough to make it look like I stayed to comfort the host," he thought, settling in. He exhaled slowly. "I'm doing all this just to get a kiss," he mused with a wry smile. His phone buzzed. It was Hayeon, letting him know she was stepping out for a bit. "Guess I'll have to stay a little longer," Sehun thought. Meanwhile, Hayeon wandered through the streets, lost in thought. "I can't stay in the house. Everything reminds me of Sehun." Her mind raced. "Why can't I get him out of my head? Am I really not that into him?" She felt her cheeks flush, thinking back to his playful requests for a kiss. "Gah! No more flashbacks," she muttered, shaking her head, trying to push the thoughts away. "Oh, Hayeon, is that you? Wow, it really is you. I haven't seen you in ages," a lady called out, her friendly smile bright as she approached. Hayeon turned, recognizing her. "Oh, Miss Lee. How've you been?" she asked, keeping her tone calm. "Great. And you?" Miss Lee smiled warmly. "Same as always," Hayeon replied with a small smile. "What about work? Did you find a new job already?" Miss Lee inquired. "Not yet. Still searching while I study," Hayeon explained. "Why don't you just come back and work with us? I told you to stay in touch after you left, but you never called," Miss Lee teased lightly. "I didn't want to brag about having free time while you were working so hard. I thought I'd reach out once I landed something stable," Hayeon replied, offering a slight grin. "You sure know how to charm people," Miss Lee said, gently touching Hayeon's face. Then, suddenly asked, "Hayeon, are you dating someone?" "Huh?" Hayeon blinked, confused by the sudden shift. "You're glowing," Miss Lee commented, smiling slyly. "What? No, of course not." Hayeon shook her head, flustered. Miss Lee laughed. "Oh, come on. Something's up, I can tell." "There's nothing. How could I be dating? I'm so busy as it is," Hayeon responded with a tense smile. "Why do I sound so pitiful?" she thought to herself. "Miss Lee, your coffee's ready," a voice called, and Hayeon turned toward the sound. Her heart skipped a beat. The two women stared at each other in shock. Hi, Hayeon. It's been a while, the woman holding the coffee said with a smirk. Lee Yujin. Hayeon recognized her instantly. She had always been polite to her because she was a year older, but now that they didn't work together anymore, she felt no need to be intimidated. You don't owe her anything, Hayeon reminded herself. Oh hi. It's good to see you. It has been a while, Hayeon forced a smile, trying to keep her composure. Miss Lee accepted her coffee from Yujin, who smiled as she handed it over. I told them to make it extra special for my manager, Yujin said sweetly. Thank you, Yujin, Miss Lee replied, sipping her coffee. I need to leave, Hayeon thought, anxious to escape. Well, I'd better get going. I'll see you later, Miss Lee. I'll get in touch once I've found a job, she said, attempting to exit the conversation. Sure. I'll treat you to dinner once you do, Miss Lee called after her, still smiling. Oh my, you still haven't found a job? Yujin's voice cut in, stopping Hayeon in her tracks. It's been a year since you quit. What have you been doing? I took a break and have been studying, Hayeon replied, her fists clenched to keep her frustration hidden. You must be doing well at work, Hayeon added, trying to redirect the conversation. Of course, Yujin said confidently, her smirk widening. Of course, Hayeon echoed silently, her irritation bubbling beneath the surface. Oh, by the way, do you still sweat a lot? Lee Yujin asked casually, her eyes gleaming with mischief. Just look, Miss Lee. It seems like it's gotten worse, don't you think? She teased, glancing at Hayeon. I mean, it is pretty hot today, Miss Lee said, looking a bit uneasy. Besides, Miss Hayeon is really clean, so it's fine. I shower a couple of times a day too because of the heat. She gave a nervous smile, trying to diffuse the tension. That's not the same, Yujin interjected, turning her gaze back to Miss Lee. You're working hard, constantly moving around. It makes sense that you're hot. But she sweats just standing still, Yujin said, her tone dripping with mock concern. Did you get it checked? She directed her question back to Hayeon, who stood still, her face betraying her growing anger even though she kept a straight expression. I told you before, if it's that bad, you should get it treated. I'm just worried about you. It's up to you whether you take the advice or not. Hayeon's mind flashed back to her last job, where her co-workers had mocked her for sweating during phone calls. She clenched her jaw as Yujin continued. I'm sure you're aware it doesn't look very sanitary. You're stubborn, you know that? Hayeon's anger simmered beneath the surface. She took a deep breath. I'll be going now. Take care, she said, trying to walk away. As she brushed past Yujin, she accidentally bumped into her. Ow. Watch where you're going. You almost got your sweat on me again, Yujin yelled, her voice cutting through the air. Hayeon paused, her entire body stiffening. Without turning, she called out, Hey Yujin. Yujin responded, yes? Her tone smug. Hayeon's voice was cold as she spoke, still not facing her. It seems you've forgotten, but I don't work with you anymore. So? What does that change? Yujin scoffed, crossing her arms. Hayeon turned to face her, her eyes burning with anger. Do you think I'll just let everything slide like I did before? She said, her voice steady but cold. What? What did you ever let slide? Lee Yujin asked coldly. The time you bumped into me and accused me of leaving a sweat stain on you, Hayeon said, reminding her of the incident at the office when she had accidentally bumped into Yujin. Oh, I'm so sorry. Hayeon had apologized back then. Later, in the dressing room, Yujin had pointed to her shirt. Look at this. There's a yellow stain, she had said, showing a dirty spot. Huh? How is that my fault? Hayeon had asked, confused. You bumped into me earlier when you were all sweaty. This is the exact spot. It's so disgusting, Yujin had snapped, her face full of disgust. I'm so sorry. I'll get it cleaned for you, Hayeon had said, sweating from embarrassment. At the laundry, the dry cleaner had examined the stain. This is a coffee stain, he said plainly. What? Hayeon had been puzzled. I see coffee stains all the time. I know it when I see it. It's impossible to get a sweat stain from just bumping into someone. Who would even say that? He'd added with a shake of his head. Now, standing in front of Yujin, Hayeon's voice hardened. I told you back then it was a coffee stain, not my sweat. Oh, did you? My bad. I must have forgotten, Yujin replied absent-mindedly, sipping her coffee, repeating the same dismissive line she'd used before. Apologizing doesn't solve everything, Hayeon said firmly. What? Yujin scoffed. Do you remember when you used me to get out of a tough situation? Hayeon's anger was rising. I had just joined the company. A customer confronted you for giving them the wrong information, and instead of taking responsibility, you gave them my name. Do you remember? She asked sharply. The memory flashed back. A customer had called Hayeon furious. Are you Kim Hayeon? I did what you told me, but it's still not working. The customer had yelled. Oh, I'm so sorry, Hayeon had said, trying to calm him. I believe you spoke with a different representative. Let me help you. Can you explain the situation again, please? Later, she had discovered that the customer had actually spoken to Yujin before calling her. When he asked for Yujin's name, she gave him yours instead, a colleague said, showing her the timestamps. Yujin had apologized back then, crying. I lied because I was scared, she had said, trembling. It's okay, Hayeon had comforted her. I might have done the same in that situation. One day, Miss Lee had spoken with some colleagues, Yujin among them. Ah, right, Hayeon and Yujin both joined the company around the same time, didn't they? Hayeon is pretty impressive. How did she manage that difficult customer just after joining? She'd asked calmly. Yujin had stayed quiet. Today, Hayeon wasn't letting her stay quiet anymore. Are you and Hayeon close? How is she? Miss Lee asked, referring to Lee Yujin. Oh, she's okay. Actually, this is kind of gross, but she sweats a lot, Yujin said casually. Hayeon felt a flash of anger. After that incident, you spread rumors about me sweating all over the office, she confronted her. I think you're misunderstanding something, Yujin replied, trying to deflect. Were you jealous of me? Hayeon asked. Why would I be jealous of you? Yujin shot back, her tone sharp. You think I didn't notice? Every time someone complimented me, you changed the subject to yourself, Hayeon said. You're seriously blaming me for something that never happened? Yujin replied, incredulous. Did you really think I'd let you walk all over me forever? You gave me condescending advice, made snide comments. Did you really think I was such a pushover? Hayeon said, stepping closer, her anger barely contained. It's all in your head, Yujin snapped back, her face growing red. All in my head? You told people I wouldn't find a boyfriend because I'm too sweaty, that no one would want to hold my hand because they'd be disgusted. I heard it all. But guess what? I found someone who likes me as I am. What do you have to say about that? Hayeon smiled, folding her arms, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Yujin glared at her before turning to Miss Lee. Miss Lee, I really don't understand why Hayeon is acting this way. Miss Hayeon, I don't know what's going on, but that's enough, Miss Lee intervened, her voice calm but firm. Yes, I agree. I won't be seeing her again, anyway, Hayeon said, her voice cool. Maybe you could spend less time talking behind people's backs and more time taking care of customers. Then people might acknowledge you for your work without you having to beg for approval. Yujin looked livid, but Hayeon wasn't finished. And one more thing, stay away from married men. I've seen you with Mr. Kim, both at work and outside. I didn't say anything because it's your personal life, but now, maybe you should think about what you're doing. This is my advice in return for all yours, Hayeon added, walking past her. Yujin's face turned pale. Wait. Is that why Mr. Kim got a divorce recently? Miss Lee asked, her voice filled with confusion. Are you done? How dare you call me a homewrecker? Yujin shouted, her anger boiling over as she grabbed Hayeon by the hair. Well, that's what you did. You call that love? Hayeon retorted, pulling Yujin's hair in response. Let go of me, you psycho. Yujin screamed, yanking Hayeon back. I did. Who do you think you are anyway? Hayeon demanded before Yujin slapped her on the face. You think you're better than me? How dare you look at me like that, she shouted, glaring at Hayeon. You hit first. Hayeon shouted, grabbing Yujin by the hair again as they wrestled, Miss Lee watching in shock. Enough. What's wrong with you two? Miss Lee shouted, trying to pull them apart. Later, at the police station, Hayeon sat with a bruised face, speaking on the phone. "Oh, my free time is up? I'm sorry. I'm at the police station. I'll call you later," she said to Ji Sehun, ending the call. "She's the one who insulted me first, calling me a homewrecker," Yoojin said angrily, glaring at Hayeon. "Miss Lee, you saw everything, right?" she added, grabbing Miss Lee's hand as if to sway her. Suddenly, a man's voice broke through the tense air. "What's going on over here?" he demanded, stepping into the office and drawing everyone's attention. "Miss Yoojin," the man said, who appeared to be Mr. Kim, sweating slightly as he entered the room. "Mr. Kim," Lee Yoojin called, rushing to embrace him. Hayeon scoffed internally. "He's the one she's been whining to on the phone?" she thought. "What's going on here?" Mr. Kim demanded. Now, let's just wrap this up," the police officer in charge said. "These two are ex-colleagues, and they had a physical altercation. Let's have apologies from both and call it a day." "A physical altercation?" Mr. Kim asked, turning to Yoojin. "She was saying things like I seduced you into an affair," Yoojin said, her eyes filling with tears. "Kim Hayeon, right? Didn't you already quit? You couldn't just focus on your own life? Why are you meddling in your ex-coworker's personal life?" Mr. Kim snapped. "What do you have against her that you'd go out of your way to spread rumors and hurt her? Do you really have that much free time on your hands? It seems you couldn't get your life together after leaving the company, so now you're attacking a hard-working woman. Mr. Kim, don't be so harsh. I'm sure she's going through a lot. She probably just got jealous and lashed out from stress," Yoojin said softly, tugging at his shirt. Hayeon held back a laugh, her eyes cold. "Ha! From her attitude, it's obvious an apology isn't going to fix this," Mr. Kim shouted, his expression full of disgust. "Mr. Kim, really I'm fine," Yoojin said, trying to calm him. "No way," he insisted. "Miss Lee, you saw everything, didn't you? Tell us what happened." Miss Lee hesitated, clearly tense. Well, you see." Before she could finish, the room's attention shifted as someone new arrived. "May I help you?" a police officer asked, as Ji Sehun stepped into the room. "Sehun?" Hayeon stammered, surprised. "What are you doing here?" He rushed to her side, his face etched with concern. "Who did this to you?" Ji Sehun demanded, gently holding her arms. His expression was a mix of anger and worry. "He looks more upset than usual," Hayeon thought, her face flushing. He glanced at her injuries, carefully touching her bruised cheek, causing her to wince. "I went through all that effort to keep you safe, and this still happens? Who hurt you?" he asked, his voice hardening as he glared at Mr. Kim and Yoojin. He carefully examined the scars on her hands and face. 8 marks. "Are there more?" he asked her, his tone gentle but furious. Ji Sehun's car key slipped from his pocket. "You dropped something," Yoojin said, pointing to it. As he bent down to pick it up, she glanced at him, intrigued. "A handsome guy with an imported car?" she thought. "What's your relationship with her?" Mr. Kim demanded, his voice sharp, drawing Ji Sehun's attention. "You're the one who did this?" Sehun asked, glaring at Mr. Kim. "Hey! Watch your mouth. Show some respect," Mr. Kim replied, visibly tense. Ji Sehun didn't respond, watching him in silence. Yoojin, observing Sehun's calm demeanor, blushed slightly. "How old are you, anyway? Are you ignoring me?" Mr. Kim demanded, his frustration growing. Sehun ignored him, making a call. "I'm at Seocho police station. Get ready and come down here," he said before hanging up. "You didn't check all the police stations looking for me, did you?" Hayeon asked softly. "Is that really important right now?" he replied, glancing at her. "Sir, what's your relationship with this woman?" the police officer asked, interrupting. "We live together," Ji Sehun responded, causing Yoojin to freeze, shocked by the revelation. "Okay, so you're cohabitants?" the officer confirmed, getting a nod from Sehun. "Please have a seat," he said, gesturing to the spot beside Hayeon. Sehun sat next to her, his gaze steady on her. "Please stop staring at me," Hayeon muttered, her face turning red. Miss Eugen was at fault for what she did when we worked together, so I won't be apologizing to her. Since we were both injured, I think it's best if we just settle and move on, Hayeon said firmly. Hold on. I'll be the judge of that, Sehun interjected, cutting her off. Ha! We won't be apologizing either. No settlement. Let's take it to court. Mr. Kim demanded, his voice growing louder. Sorry, I'm late. I came as fast as I could, Miss Lee said, walking into the office. Hayeon stared at her, speechless. Is Miss Hayeon the victim or a suspect? Miss Lee asked casually, approaching them. Hayeon, tense and at a loss for words, hesitated. Well, of course, it really doesn't matter which it is, Miss Lee said, folding her arms with a smile. Hyung-sik walked into the room, his presence immediately intensifying the atmosphere. Mr. Kim and Lee Eugen grew tense. Miss Lee leaned forward, studying Hayeon's injuries. Is this a physical assault case? She asked. Yes, there was a physical altercation between the two, and it didn't stop even after the police were called. That's why we're here, the officer explained. Miss Lee glanced at Eugen's manager seated nearby. Do we have any witnesses present? She asked. Excuse me, what is your relationship with her? The officer asked Miss Lee. I am the assistant to cellist Ji Sehun, she replied, handing over her card. Wait, Ji Sehun? The same Ji Sehun I saw on a magazine cover? Eugen thought, shocked. Miss Kim Hayeon here is the manager of our artist, Miss Lee continued. This man mentioned earlier that they live together, the officer asked, still piecing things together. Yes, our artist personally requested Miss Kim to work with him, and he also has personal feelings for her. So yes, they are currently living together, Miss Lee confirmed, leaving Eugen speechless. He likes her? Eugen thought, her surprise evident. The condition of Miss Kim is of direct concern to Mr. Ji, Miss Lee added, while Ji Sehun gently adjusted Hayeon's hair. Eugen stared in disbelief. How could someone like him be interested in a girl like her? Since she's been hurt, we can't just let this slide. Mr. Chun Min-cheol, Mr. Ji's lawyer, will handle the legal matters. Please explain to him what happened, Miss Lee instructed, introducing Sehun's lawyer. Miss Lee Eugen was the first to strike Miss Kim. The reason given was that Miss Kim had embarrassed Miss Lee in front of her co-worker, the officer reported. Hayeon, visibly uncomfortable, glanced at Miss Lee, who gave her a reassuring nod. A year ago, she constantly bullied me at work. Eugen spread rumors about me, making it sound like I had some disease just because I sweat, Hayeon confessed, her voice quiet but steady. Ji Sehun's expression darkened. You're the team leader? Miss Lee asked the witness. Have you heard about this from Miss Lee before? Yes, the woman answered hesitantly. It was always Miss Eugen talking about Miss Kim, and our colleagues usually just laughed it off. Just because Miss Kim stayed quiet doesn't mean she wasn't hurt by it. Miss Kim, is it true that you thought reacting might make things worse? Miss Lee asked. Yes, I didn't want to make it worse, so I stayed silent. I thought everything would end once I quit. But running into her today, nothing had changed, and it made me angry, Hayeon admitted. Eugen, watching Hayeon's discomfort, couldn't help but grin. If it still made Hayeon angry even after a year, I think that shows a lot of restraint on her part. What do you think, Mr. Chun? Miss Lee asked the lawyer. I agree. If we can confirm that Miss Kim wasn't a volatile person at work, it strengthens her case, he replied. We have her team leader here, and we can also reach out to some of her colleagues, Miss Lee assured him. Why did they bully you? Ji Sehun asked softly, gently turning Hayeon's face toward him. She looked away slightly, avoiding his gaze. Miss Lee noticed the anger building in Sehun as he clenched his fists. I should settle this quickly, she thought. We also need to verify whether Miss Kim really exposed Eugen's personal life, she added, shifting the conversation. Verify? What do you mean? Mr. Kim asked, confused. What do you mean? Eugen interrupted angrily. She already humiliated me, making me out to be some kind of homewrecker. Yes, my manager and I were in a secret relationship, but we love each other. He's currently divorced, so there's no issue with his family. Currently divorced? That means your relationship started before the divorce, correct? Miss Lee asked, her words catching Eugen off guard as beads of sweat formed on her forehead. I guess we'll have to reach out to your manager's ex-wife to get the full story, Miss Lee continued. If Miss Kim fabricated anything, it could damage her case, but you must have seen something to back up your claim, right? She asked Hayeon. Yes, Hayeon confirmed, while Eugen shifted uneasily. Hayeon isn't one to lie, Miss Lee thought. That's probably why she always ends up the victim in these situations. Miss Lee turned back to Eugen and Mr. Kim. I suggest you find a lawyer. It was a one-sided physical assault, and we have no intention of settling. Wait, hold on, Mr. Kim interjected, forcing a smile. Now that I think about it, maybe we should just apologize and move on. There's no need to drag everyone into this. It's in everyone's best interest to let it go, he added, trying to de-escalate the situation. Eugen looked stunned by his sudden change in tone. The officer suggested that too, didn't he? Let's apologize and be done with it, Mr. Kim said, turning to Eugen. Go on, apologize. Eugen, her face tense, turned toward Hayeon. I'm truly sorry for hitting you. There. I've apologized. Let's go now, she said, trembling slightly. What are you talking about? Miss Lee interjected, smiling. We're already here. Did you think we were joking when we said we'd take this to court? If you were going to apologize, you should have done it before we got here, she said, stunning Eugen. We're done here, right? Ji Sehun asked as he stood up, holding Hayeon's hand. Wait, Sehun, Hayeon said softly, but he was already walking out. Hayeon, bring the car around, Sehun instructed as they left the police station. Once in the car, he said, to the hospital. Why did she do that to your face? If you don't get it treated, you'll have scars, Hayeon teased. Scars? Sehun repeated, his anger rising. I mean, if she applies some ointment, it should be fine. Medical technology is advanced, and scarring won't be an issue. Korea's plastic surgery is the best, Hayeon said nervously, trying to calm him. He's right. There's no need for the hospital. It's just a few scratches, Hayeon added. Small scratches? Don't downplay this. It makes me look foolish for being so angry, Sehun replied, his face still tense with frustration. When Ji Sehun found out Hayeon was at the police station, he was shaken. For the first time, he realized how shock could make someone forget everything around them. Rushing out of the house, he couldn't remember how many times he switched lanes or how fast he was going. It was all a blur. When he saw the scratches on her face, his chest tightened painfully. I'm really sorry I couldn't make it back on time today. You didn't have to come all the way to the station, but thank you, Hayeon said, her voice low and eyes avoiding his. I'm sorry I dragged you into my mess. She deserved to have left a mark on the woman who did this. But no, Sehun thought, it would be better to leave something that would make her miserable for a lot longer than a few scratches. He ran his fingers through Hayeon's hair, studying the marks on her face. The face I've always been so gentle with. She hurt her. I'll make sure she pays for this, more than she expects. At the hospital, the doctor examined Hayeon. There might be some bruising here, he said, applying a bandage to one of the cuts. What? Sehun asked, worried. It's really not that bad, Hayeon reassured him. What about scarring? Sehun pressed. As long as she uses the ointment, she should be fine, the doctor replied. 2 weeks to heal? Okay, Hayeon said as they made their way to the hospital exit. Miss Kim, you don't need to worry about this anymore. We'll handle everything from here, he reassured her with a smile. Okay, thank you, Hayeon replied softly. I also got the ointments for your treatment, he continued, handing her the medicine bag. This one's for bruising and swelling, and this is for the scratches. They mentioned being careful about sun exposure, he added. Okay. Thank you so much, she said, taking the bag from him with a grateful nod. As they drove back to Sehun's apartment, the car was quiet. Hayeon clutched the bag of medicine in her lap. When they arrived, Hayeon stopped the car. Sehun, both of you should get some rest. It's been a long day. Thank you so much for everything. Drive safely, Hayeon said with a small smile. I don't think it's me you should be worried about, Hayeon thought, watching Sehun and Hayeon walk away. As they approached the elevator, the silence between them made Hayeon tense. This is suffocating. He's definitely mad. He's not acting like himself, she thought anxiously. How did she bully you? Ji Sehun suddenly asked as the elevator doors closed. The question caught Hayeon off guard, and she flinched. Well, she made fun of me for sweating a lot and spread some rumors. That's it, she replied quietly. There's always at least one person like that, no matter where you go. Then we should treat them the same way, he muttered as they stepped into his apartment. No, don't fall for him over something like this, Hayeon told herself, trying to calm her racing heart as her face flushed. Go wash up, Sehun told her. Okay, she replied, turning to leave. Do you want me to help? He asked, causing her to stop. No, I can manage, she said quickly. You helped me when I hurt my hand, he reminded her. That was different. Your hand was hurt. I'm okay, she insisted. All right, then go ahead, Sehun said. Hayeon nodded, heading to the bathroom. Not now, she thought, her face still red from the tension between them. As Sehun sat on the couch, a frustrated expression crossed his face. Do I need to keep her from even leaving the house? When Hayeon returned, freshly changed, she broke the silence. Sehun, did you go to the funeral? Her question snapped him out of his thoughts. You said he was your teacher. Did you pay your respects? She pressed gently, sitting next to him. I can't even remember, with everything that happened to you, he replied, his eyes on her. You won't be able to go anywhere with your face like that, he added. Oh right, she said, touching the bruises lightly. Just stay home, he insisted. I can't do that. You're back in Korea now, and you need to start going to rehearsals, Hayeon urged. I can rehearse at home, he replied. I'll be fine. I can wear a hat, she offered, but he interrupted her. I don't want you to, he said firmly, his words making her blush. Do you want me to take care of you? He asked softly. How would you do that at home? She asked as he moved closer. Before she could process his words, he kissed her gently and pulled away, leaving her flushed. After I get what you promised, he said, cupping her face with a soft smile. Oh right. I promised to kiss him if he went to the funeral, she thought, and they kissed again. Taking care of you isn't hard. You're worth it, he murmured as he gently guided her back against the chair, their gazes locked. Taking care of you isn't that hard, Ji Sehun said calmly. What do you mean by taking care of me? I'm not a baby, you know, Hayeon replied, turning her flushed face away. Sehun observed her quietly for a moment. If I hadn't left her alone, she wouldn't have gone out by herself and gotten hurt. It's like that old man cursed me, going after something more valuable than my own hand, he thought, recalling the funeral. I shouldn't have gone, he muttered, releasing her hand. What? Hayeon asked, confused. Did you apply your ointment? Sehun asked, shifting the conversation. Hayeon handed him the tube, and he carefully read the instructions. You're going to read all that? Just apply it already. She teased with a smile. Tell me if it hurts, he said softly, as he started applying the ointment to her face. Okay, she whispered, feeling his gentle touch. Sehun's gaze focused on her scratches. It looks worse than before, he said, leaning in to inspect them more closely. As his face drew nearer, Hayeon blushed. Stop, she said, pushing him gently, trying to hide her embarrassment. Did it hurt? He asked, his tone calm. What's wrong with me? We just kissed, so why am I so shy all of a sudden? She thought, flustered. Just then, the doorbell rang, breaking the tension. Oh, that must be your housekeeper, Hayeon said with relief. Perfect timing, she thought. It's been a while. How have you both been? The housekeeper greeted, walking in with bags of groceries. Hi. It has been a while. Why did you buy so much? Hayeon asked, standing up. I've been away for a bit, so I thought I'd make you two a nice dinner, the housekeeper replied warmly. Ji Sehun held her hand. Stay here, he told her firmly. No, I should help her with the groceries. I'll be back, it's not like I hurt my hand or anything, Hayeon insisted, trying to escape the intensity of the moment. I need to get away before he hears my heart pounding, she thought. I said stay here. I'll do it, Sehun repeated, heading toward the kitchen. Hayeon froze, her face flushed, as she watched him walk away. "Oh, sir, you don't have to. I can handle it," the housekeeper said nervously as Sehun started unpacking the bags. What's gotten into him? She thought, puzzled by his sudden hands-on approach. "No, it's fine. I've got it." "You can sit down for a bit," she insisted, but he didn't budge. "There's so much stuff," Sehun thought as he looked at the counter overflowing with groceries. "You don't have to spend too long on it," he told her. "Of course I do. Only the best and freshest ingredients for you, sir," she protested. "I just want her to hurry up and leave," Sehun thought, glancing at Hayeon who was seated in the sitting room. "If it helps her get better faster, fine," he thought, glancing at some vitamins. "Here, say, Ji Sehun said, walking over to Hayeon with a glass of water and a pill in hand. She obediently opened her mouth. "She's like a baby bird," he thought, suppressing a smile. "Swallow all of them," he told her, tossing a few pills into her mouth. "What is it?" Hayeon asked before washing them down with the water. "What was that?" she asked again, this time more calmly. She swallowed them without any suspicion, Sehun thought, his expression unreadable. "Why aren't you answering me? Did you give me something you weren't supposed to?" Hayeon pressed, noticing his silence. "They're just vitamins. Good for you. Take them every day," he reassured her. "Oh, okay," she replied, seeming satisfied. "Did you finish helping with the groceries?" she asked, smiling brightly. "Yeah, I helped," Sehun responded. "Good job. I can imagine how heavy they must have been for her. She's always bringing bags of ingredients to make you the best food. Even if you can't help every time, at least greet her like you did today, okay?" Hayeon said, her cheeks flushed as she beamed at him. "Is that the right answer?" "She's smiling," Sehun thought, watching her closely. "She's one of the people who thinks of you all the time. If you talk to her and help her out, I'm sure it'll make her happy," Hayeon added, still smiling warmly. "Who is she worrying about here?" he wondered as he continued to observe her. Soon, dinner was served. "Oh my! What is all this?" Hayeon exclaimed, delighted by the spread on the dining table. "Like I said, I wanted to make you two a nice dinner since it's been so long," the housekeeper replied with a smile. "Oh, what happened to your face?" she asked, noticing the scratches on Hayeon's cheek. "Oh, this? I got into a fight with an ex-coworker," Hayeon explained nonchalantly. "Oh no. How dare they do that to your precious face?" the housekeeper said, concerned. "Don't worry. The scar will go away in no time," Hayeon reassured her with a smile. "Since you've worked so hard to make us dinner, why don't you stay and join us?" she asked politely. "Oh, that's okay. I need to get home and make dinner for my kids, too. Don't worry about me. You two enjoy your evening," the housekeeper replied. "Join us," Ji Sehun insisted, surprising them both as they looked at him in confusion. "Oh no, Mr. Ji, really it's fine," the housekeeper protested, a bit flustered. "Please, it's fine. Sehun wants you to stay and eat with us," Hayeon added, sitting her down and encouraging her. "Well, I guess I'll just have a little. Thank you so much for being considerate, Mr. Ji," the housekeeper said, sitting down hesitantly. Seriously, what's gotten into him? She wondered as they all sat down together. "Do you even know how delicious your food is? I always wanted to tell you but never had the chance," Hayeon said warmly, seated beside Ji Sehun at the dinner table. "I must have done something right this time," Ji Sehun thought, watching her chat with the housekeeper. Despite the lively dinner scene, he didn't mind. He had grown used to adjusting to Hayeon's presence, or rather, letting go of his usual guard. "You are more valuable to me than my hand," he mused quietly, observing her joy. After dinner, they brushed their teeth together. Ji Sehun's gaze stayed on her, something Hayeon couldn't ignore. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" she asked, glancing at him. "In case you get hurt," he answered simply. "Hurt? I'm just brushing my teeth," she said, a smile tugging at her lips. "I don't mind the attention," she thought, though her mind wandered back to their vacation, when Ji Sehun offered her his wallet. She rinsed her mouth, trying to shake the thought away. "I can't fall for him any more than this. Think of the contract," she reminded herself as they finished. "Good night. Thanks again for today." You must be exhausted. Get some rest, she said. Why aren't you sleeping with me? He asked suddenly. I only slept with you because you were injured. It's not like there's only one bed, and according to the contract, I get to sleep in my own bed, she replied, trying to sound firm but noticing his frown. Okay. Good night, Hayeon quickly added, retreating into her room and shutting the door behind her. But as she lay in bed, sleep refused to come. Why does this bed feel so awkward and uncomfortable? She thought, tossing and turning. Just then, the door creaked open slightly. Ji Sehun stood at the door, watching her. I told you not to come into my room, Hayeon said, tensing up as she met his gaze. You forgot to apply your ointment, he replied, holding up the tube. Oh right. Can you turn the light on for me? She asked as he approached. I can see just fine without it, he said, sitting beside her. I'll do it myself. Give it to me and get out, she insisted. You don't have a mirror, he pointed out, already squeezing some ointment onto his thumb. Without waiting for a response, he began gently applying it to her injuries. She got you good, he muttered. Why didn't you hit her back? Hayeon stifled a laugh. What's so funny? He asked, his tone serious. I don't know, it's just funny. You're saying things even my parents never said. A few days ago, I was putting ointment on you, and now you're doing it for me. It's like we take turns taking care of each other, she said with a soft smile. I can't lie, it does feel more comfortable when you do it. Don't laugh. I'm serious, Ji Sehun replied, his expression unchanged. Suddenly, he pulled off his shirt. What are you doing? Hayeon asked, her tension rising. We have to sleep, he said casually. Why would you sleep here? You have your own room, she insisted. You're hurt, he replied, as if it was the most logical explanation, dropping his shirt on the floor. Then, without hesitation, he removed his trousers. Flushed, Hayeon quickly turned her back to him, pulling the bedsheet up to her chin. That's exactly why I should sleep alone. Rest is important for recovery, she said, her voice shaky. Ignoring her protest, Ji Sehun got into bed. I'm just worried you might roll off. I'll make sure you don't, he said, wrapping an arm around her. There's no way I'd roll off the bed. I don't move around when I sleep. You've slept with me before, you should know that, she protested, feeling the warmth of his body pressing against hers. It still worries me. It's cozy though, isn't it? He asked, drawing her closer. No, it's not. You're taking up all the space, and it's uncomfortable, she muttered, her face growing redder by the second. Ji Sehun pulled her even closer. He's going to hear my heart pounding, she thought, wanting to push him away but finding his warmth comforting. You're really heating up. Are you sure you don't have a cold? Go back to your room before you get me sick, she said, trying to sound firm. I'm heating up because of you, not because of a cold, he whispered. Gah, why did I even ask him that? She thought. I need to fall asleep. Fast. She tried to count sheep to calm down. 1 sheep, 2, 3. But the sensation of Ji Sehun's body touching hers kept distracting her. Hey, scoot back, she insisted, trying to keep space between them. It's okay. I want to stay like this, he murmured. What does he mean, it's okay? She thought, trying to push away his words. Okay, back to the sheep. Ah, I forgot what sheep even look like. Her mind drifted, picturing Ji Sehun instead. Let's sleep, Ji Sehun whispered, his voice soft but lingering. I hope he means that literally, Hayeon thought, her mind drifting back to his earlier words about wanting to do it with her. He probably says things like that to other women too, right? If you're not sleepy, don't you feel like it? He murmured close to her ear. What? Hayeon said, her face puzzled. It'll make you feel better, he continued. It was an exhausting day, but the only thing that brought me any happiness was being with you. All those scars on your face really got to me. I'm sure you feel the same. No one likes being in pain. Ji Sehun's thoughts wandered back to the image of her lying on the sunbed. I loved holding you, because I love you. I want to make you feel good, but after that day, I can't forget the disappointed face you made. Which is what I need you to give me permission, he thought, watching her calmly. We can, if you want to. Just tell me no if you don't, he tells her. Hayeon tensed. His words stirred something inside her, but doubt crept in. Is that all you think about when he sees me? She tightened her grip on the bedsheet. I knew he liked me for my body, but here I am, doing everything to hide my feelings, while he doesn't even try to hide his desires. All he cares about is touching me. Sitting up, she turned to face him, her expression hard. You've done this to all the women you liked touching, haven't you? She asked, her voice sharp. What happens when you find someone who feels better than me? She thought. Ji Sehun looked up at her, surprised. You used your charms to get them to sleep with you, didn't you? She continued, her voice rising. You were my first, he said quietly. Her eyes widened. First? I was your first? Yeah. His tone was steady, unbothered by the shock in her voice. I've met a lot of women, but I never got close to any of them. I always thought a woman's body was mysterious, but it wasn't as interesting as playing the cello. He paused, his gaze never leaving her. It was you who made me want to share a bed for the first time. The first person to make me stop playing the cello and change my priorities. Hayeon stared at him, her heart pounding. Why make that kind of joke? She wondered. You're lying, right? She asked, still in disbelief. How could that have been his first time? He found spots that made me feel things I didn't even know were possible. Her face flushed as the memories came flooding back. It was so good it almost made me want to cry. What's the problem? Ji Sehun asked calmly. Isn't it a good thing that you were my first? What? No, it's just that I've never been someone's first before, she admitted, feeling strangely vulnerable. I can't believe I'm his first, she said inwardly. I don't care if I was your first, she added quickly, trying to sound casual. Okay then. If you say you don't care, then it shouldn't matter. What's wrong? He asked, his voice quiet. Are you worried that I'll make you feel guilty because you were my first? No, that's not it. It just feels, she started to explain, but Ji Sehun leaned closer, their faces now inches apart. Okay, he whispered, his voice low. Well, what if I did want you to feel guilty about it? Me, feel guilty about you? Why? It's not like we're dating or anything. We have a contract that's keeping us together, Hayeon said, her voice firm. Ah, the contract. Okay, then let's get rid of it, and we can start dating, Ji Sehun replied, almost casually. What? Start dating? Hayeon's voice was full of confusion. Be my girlfriend. Let's be a couple. If we get rid of the contract, we can also get rid of all these silly rules that keep us from sleeping together. I could even have a say in your personal life, he added with a smile. I hated it when I was on the receiving end, but with you, I get so needy. Be my girlfriend. His tone had shifted, serious now. It was a title I gave to other meaningless girls in the past, but with you, I can give you all the titles you want, Ji Sehun said, his voice soft yet unwavering. Let me be your boyfriend, under one condition, we can't break up. Hayeon turned away, frowning. Wow. Everything is so easy for you, isn't it? What? Ji Sehun looked confused. I can't take anything you say seriously. She kept her back to him as she sat on the bed. What are you talking about? He asked, looking puzzled. I can't feel anything genuine about your feelings toward me, she said coldly. What you're doing just seems like a way to keep us together. Ji Sehun nodded slightly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So, be my girlfriend. What I hear from you, she continued, is that you just want to do whatever you want with me, under the pretense of being my boyfriend. Am I wrong? You just like the way I make you feel. Isn't that why you want me to be your girlfriend? So you can touch me whenever you want? She asked. No, he responded, his voice calm. Well, that's how I feel. She sighed, her frustration evident. You trying to convince me to get rid of the contract feels manipulative. And even after I said we're not dating, you immediately asked me out. Did all the other girls fall for that? Sorry to break it to you, but I'm not the type to fall for such words. She slipped under the sheets again, clearly ending the conversation. I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that. Now, go to sleep. You must be tired. I'm too tired to keep talking about this. But starting tomorrow, you sleep in your own bed. Ji Sehun watched her in silence, a feeling of distance settling between them. Sometimes, I wish you were a cello. That way, you'd understand how I feel by the way I use my hands, he thought bitterly, staring at her. They were just inches apart, yet it felt like miles. What's missing? He wondered. I'm starting to hate myself for not being enough for you. The next morning, Ji Sehun was already awake, watching Hayeon as she stirred. When she saw him, she quickly sat up. How'd you sleep? She asked, her tone casual, almost distant, as if she were talking to a coworker. How do I get my true feelings across to her? He thought, sitting quietly, watching her with a mix of frustration and longing. They remained quiet for most of the morning, though Ji Sehun's thoughts were restless, swirling with uncertainty. How? Just how? What can I do? He wondered, glancing at Hayeon as they sat in the parlor. The silence between them was heavy, the distance palpable. Suddenly, Hayeon broke the silence. It's so boring staying in all day, she muttered, her eyes fixed on the TV. Staying in with me is boring? He thought, feeling a pang of disappointment. Why is it boring? He asked. Because we're not doing anything, she replied sadly. We're just inside your house. We have everything indoors, he tried to reason. So? We're still inside. It's stifling, she sighed, clearly frustrated. How did I fall for a man like this? Hayeon thought to herself, feeling a wave of regret. It's like walking into a fire pit when everyone warned me not to. What's there to do outside? Ji Sehun asked, attempting to understand her restlessness. What do you normally do when you're out? On my day off, I like to go out, watch people passing by, check out new places to eat. Sometimes I find a cute cafe or go somewhere nice with friends, just to chat and have coffee, she explained. It's cool and cozy here, and I have a coffee machine. I'm even feeding her, Ji Sehun thought, feeling slightly confused. So all you need is more people around? He asked. People? Hayeon echoed, puzzled. Just then, Miss Lee, her assistant, entered the room. Miss Kim, your scars seem to be getting better, Miss Lee said as she sat down beside her. My assistant isn't a friend, Hayeon thought. But aloud she responded, ah yes. Thanks to the care, I'm getting better by the minute. How have you been? I've been great, Miss Lee replied. I brought something that needs your signature. She placed some documents on the table. You don't need to read all of it. It's just an agreement that you're allowing the lawyer to handle everything. That woman is going to try her hardest to meet up with you to convince you to settle. Have you received any calls? Miss Lee asked. I don't answer calls from unknown numbers, Hayeon replied. And I've had my phone on mute because of Sehun, she thought to herself. What about messages? Miss Lee pressed. Yes, I've been getting some. They weren't worth replying to, so I ignored them, Hayeon said, recalling the apology messages from Lee Yujin. You're wiser than I thought. Good job. If you had replied and forgiven her, I might have gotten angry at you, Miss Lee smiled. Just then, Ji Sehun re-entered the room, interrupting their conversation. How did it turn out? He asked, looking between Hayeon and Miss Lee. It was pretty easy getting a hold of the manager's ex-wife, Miss Lee began. She suspected he was having an affair during their marriage, but it seems he flipped it around and made her look like the one losing her mind. That's how their divorce went through. I introduced her to a lawyer, so it's a civil case for her, but for Miss Kim, it's a criminal one. We're going to charge her not only for the physical assault but also for emotional damages. Miss Lee glanced at Hayeon. From what I've gathered, you had a good reputation at your previous company. Everyone testified that you weren't the type to get into fights. What goes around comes around, right? So Miss Kim, all that's left for you is to join us when we go to court. That's it? Ji Sehun asked, his tone unimpressed. We'll need to consult with Mr. Chun, the lawyer, but yes, that's it for now, Miss Lee responded. Ji Sehun's expression shifted as he focused on Hayeon. You're my assistant. Shouldn't you be compensating for my feelings, too? He asked. Miss Lee hesitated, then added, if you want, we can drag this case out as long as possible to make them suffer. Being stuck in both a civil and criminal case brings a lot of mental stress. There will be investigations, and Ms. Lee won't escape rumors at the company. Keep going, Sehun urged her. No, that's enough. I'm fine, Hayeon interjected, her face tense. Ms. Lee, you're aware of all the legal sides of this, so I'm sure you'll handle everything, she said, trying to deflect the conversation. Yoojin is a problem, but it's Sehun getting involved that scares me the most, she thought, a chill running down her spine. I can't believe I thought going to court with him was a good idea. I don't want to take this too far, Hayeon continued, her voice calmer. If Yoojin feels remorse for what she did, I think I could forgive her. Why are you the one to decide that? Ji Sehun shot back, his voice cold. Don't be too harsh, Hayeon said, looking down. I just want her to be punished for what she did wrong. Going overboard isn't what I want. She bullied you, Sehun replied firmly, his serious tone leaving no room for debate. What? Hayeon asked, looking a bit taken aback. She was taking advantage of you. You're a nice person, so to them, you're an easy target, Ji Sehun said, his tone firm. That makes it sound like it's my fault. Is it wrong to be nice? Hayeon thought, her expression becoming more subdued. Anyway, that's in the past. Now that I'm here, things are going to be different. I want them to know you're not someone to mess with anymore, Ji Sehun said, his gaze steady on her. We're following through on what we discussed. Don't let them off easy, and dig up everything you can, he tells Miss Lee. Okay, I'll keep you posted, Miss Lee replied, nodding. She noted how serious Sehun looked, while Hayeon seemed a little lost in thought. He's acting like it happened to him, Hayeon thought, feeling her cheeks warm with confusion. Alright, so I think we're done for now, Miss Lee said, observing the tension between them. What's going on with you two? She asked, noticing them awkwardly glance away from each other. Before they could respond, Hyungsik entered the room, holding a box of wines. Ms. Kim. Sehun, he greeted. Hi Hyungsik, Hayeon smiled as she stepped forward. How've you been? Hyungsik asked with a friendly grin. Isn't that heavy? Let me help you, Hayeon offered. Give it here, Ji Sehun said, surprising Hyungsik with his sharp tone. Sehun, did I do something wrong? You're mad at me, right? I'm sorry, Hyungsik stammered nervously. Ji Sehun picked up one of the bottles from the box. You bought this cheap stuff too? He muttered. It's the wine, isn't it? Hyungsik asked, still a little uneasy. Hyungsik, did Sehun ask you to bring this? Hayeon asked. No, he asked me to come over and keep you company, Hyungsik explained. For me? Hayeon thought, slightly surprised. Same here, Miss Lee chimed in. Since we couldn't go out, we figured we'd spend time here. We could grill something for dinner, Hyungsik suggested, following Ji Sehun and Miss Lee to the dining area. I'll help with the vegetables, Hayeon offered as she joined them. Oh, by the way, is the grill still out on the balcony? Hyungsik asked Miss Lee. The balcony? Hayeon echoed, her surprise clear. Yeah, didn't you know? There's an outdoor space here, Miss Lee explained. I guess you wouldn't have noticed. Sehun doesn't like the sun, so he's never out there. Hayeon blinked, taking in the information. She followed them out, marveling as she saw the balcony for the first time. Wow, she said quietly. The grill's still here, though it's a bit dusty, Miss Lee said, inspecting it. Hyungsik, can you clean it up? Sure, I'll take care of it, he replied with a nod. Now that I think about it, I haven't really heard how you've been since you became Sehun's manager. Ready for some fun tonight? Miss Lee asked, smiling at Hayeon. Yeah, I'm down, Hayeon replied with a grin. As the balcony was set up, Ji Sehun placed some glasses on the table, glancing toward the kitchen where Hayeon and Miss Lee were washing vegetables together. Hayeon seemed happy. Maybe this was the right choice after all, he thought, a small smile forming. Alright, let's toast to Ms. Kim's success, Hyungsik announced once everyone was seated. To success. They cheered, clinking their glasses. You guys go ahead. I'll start grilling, Hyungsik said, getting up. Hyungsik, I'm pretty good at grilling, let me help, Hayeon offered. Oh no, don't worry about it. You just relax and eat, Hyungsik replied with a smile. But if you grill, you won't get to eat much, she pointed out. I'll eat while grilling, don't worry, he assured her, resuming his work. If we all took turns, everyone could enjoy the food more easily, Hayeon thought. She got a towel and wiped the sweat off Hyungsik's brow. Oh, thank you, Hyungsik said, a little surprised. It is pretty hot today. I just thought maybe we could take turns, Hayeon suggested calmly. She's really thoughtful, Hyungsik mused. Seeing her between those two, she stands out even more, he thought. But you can stay here and keep me company, he added with a smile. Why do I feel like someone's staring at me? Hyungsik glanced over his shoulder and saw Ji Sehun watching him with a cold expression. You know what? You should sit and relax, Miss Kim, Hyungsik said, gently urging her back to her seat. It's already hot enough, and 2 people at the grill will just make it worse. Hayeon returned to her seat, feeling something was off. He doesn't seem like himself today. So, Miss Kim, tell me about your trip, Miss Lee asked, smiling. The trip? Hayeon asked, a little surprised. Yeah, you were gone for over a week with Sehun, Miss Lee said. Oh, that. Nothing much happened. Well, except his hand, Hayeon said, smiling. His hand? Miss Lee asked, confused. I mean, you know, he doesn't like using his hands much, so I ended up helping him a lot, Hayeon explained, glancing at her own hands. Ji Sehun's gaze fixed on her, causing her to blush slightly. Hayeon recounted the story of how they played together at a restaurant during the trip. Sehun played at the restaurant? Miss Lee asked, surprised. Yeah, and I played the piano, Hayeon added. Ji Sehun quietly sipped his wine as Miss Lee looked impressed. Sehun usually only plays on stage or in his studio, she said. That's rare. Oh, that explains why he looked at me like that the other day in the studio, Hayeon said, her tone lightening. You could have said no if you didn't want to play. I feel silly for making you do it now, she said, glancing at Sehun, who looked tense. Miss Lee chimed in. Looks like you were the exception. She played for me too. I didn't just play for no reason, Ji Sehun said calmly. Oh, you mentioned playing the piano at the restaurant. Do you play often? Miss Lee asked. I'm not really any good, Hayeon admitted. Well, if Sehun wanted to hear you play, that's enough to make me curious. Sehun, how was Miss Kim on the piano? Miss Lee asked with a teasing smile. Ji Sehun responded calmly. It was like hearing a 15-year-old attempt Moonlight Sonata. She didn't have the basic skills, but I was touched, he said, drawing Hayeon's attention. Didn't have the basic skills? Hayeon thought, her face tightening slightly. It makes me angry, but he's not wrong. I've worked with Sehun for a long time, but I've never heard him say he was impressed, Miss Lee said, covering her smile with her hand. Well, at least he said he was touched, Hayeon thought, taking a bite of grilled meat. I can't believe I impressed Ji Sehun. We already finished all that wine? Hyungsik asked, noticing the empty bottles piled up. Wow, are you sure you want to open that vintage bottle with us? He added, watching Ji Sehun hold up a new bottle of wine. Is this good wine? Hayeon asked, curious. Yeah, the aroma, and the way it just glides down. It's amazing, Hyungsik replied. It's that good? Hayeon thought, feeling her cheeks flush. Are you sure we should drink this? You won't regret it? Hyungsik asked Ji Sehun, who nodded, getting a cheer as he popped it open. Sehun, you must be in a good mood tonight, Miss Lee chimed in. Miss Kim, can you usually handle your drinks? She asked, turning to Hayeon. Not really, just enough to have fun, Hayeon replied with a smile. So, you're not a lightweight. You're a good match for Sehun then, Hyungsik teased, pouring wine into everyone's glasses. Alright, let's all take a sip, he said, and they clinked glasses. Hayeon took a big gulp. Whoa! This is incredible, she said, her face turning red. Right? Miss Kim, you already finished your glass. Let me pour you more, Hyungsik said, refilling her glass. Thank you, she said with a nod. Hyungsik then tiptoed, sneaking something behind his back. What's that? Ji Sehun asked, spotting the wine Hyungsik was hiding. It's not for me, I just wanted Miss Kim to try something new. Look at her. She loves it, Hyungsik said with a grin. It's true. She looks like she's enjoying herself, Ji Sehun thought, watching her sip her wine. Can I open this one too? Hyungsik asked, getting an enthusiastic nod. He's the same when we travel abroad, Miss Lee told Hayeon. He doesn't rehearse much on the road. Oh, I see, Hayeon replied, looking serious. Why is she so interested in that boring story? Ji Sehun thought, his gaze lingering on her. He reached out and gently touched her face. You can lean on me if you're feeling tipsy, he said softly, brushing her cheek. Oh, okay, she replied, a little flustered. But I have a question. Why aren't you two dating already? Hyung-sik suddenly asked, his face flushed from the wine, catching Miss Lee off guard. It's obvious there's something between you two. Don't you think so, Ms. Lee? Hyung-sik asked, turning to her. Hyung-sik? Miss Lee exclaimed, looking embarrassed. Maybe they're already in a relationship, and we just don't know it, he added, pointing at Sehun and Hayeon. Oh no, we're not, Hayeon quickly said, her tone tense. An awkward silence fell over the group. Ji Sehun set his cup down firmly. Follow me, he said sternly to Hyung-sik. Ms. Lee? Did I do something wrong? Hyung-sik asked, confused. Go on, Miss Lee said softly, placing her hand against her temple as she watched Hyung-sik follow Ji Sehun into the dining room. Once they were alone, Ji Sehun turned to face Hyung-sik. What did you just say out there? His tone was sharp but controlled. Hyung-sik hesitated, his tension visible. I was just saying that you two look good together. You're both attractive, and Miss Kim is so nice and polite. She's also careful and considerate around you, Hyung-sik explained. Careful? Ji Sehun raised an eyebrow, cutting him off. Isn't she? Hyung-sik asked, clearly puzzled. Not that, Ji Sehun muttered, walking towards the dining. Huh? Hyung-sik blinked, trying to follow his train of thought. Not that part. Tell me more, Ji Sehun demanded as he gestured for Hyung-sik to follow him. Hyung-sik scratched his head as he tried to gather his thoughts. Well, according to Miss Lee, you two signed a contract, but it doesn't feel like just business between you. Who lets someone do whatever they want just because it's work? She's way too careful around you. I've seen plenty of women in my time, and the way Miss Kim looks at you. It's more than just a job. Am I wrong? Hyung-sik asked, pausing for a moment, gauging Sehun's reaction. Ji Sehun turned his gaze to Hyung-sik, his expression unreadable. I asked her out. She rejected me. What? Hyung-sik's voice nearly cracked. You asked her out? And she said no? He looked genuinely shocked. Yeah, Ji Sehun said simply. It doesn't make sense to you either, does it? Hyung-sik put his hands to his head, trying to process what he'd just heard. Wait, let me think about this. He sat down, his face full of concentration. He began listing the types of women Ji Sehun had been surrounded by: actresses, models, career women, people who are well-known, successful. You've met all kinds of women from different backgrounds. But, he paused, deep in thought. There's something different about Miss Kim. Isn't it your first time asking a woman out yourself? Hyung-sik asked, narrowing his eyes. Yes, Ji Sehun admitted quietly. That's not the only thing. She's my first, he said inwardly. Hyung-sik raised an eyebrow, looking puzzled. She really turned you down? He asked. How many times do I have to tell you? Ji Sehun replied, slightly irritated. What exactly did you say? Like, what was the situation? Hyung-sik asked, pressing further. Actually, before any of that, let me ask you one thing. Who is Miss Kim to you? What do you feel toward her? Ji Sehun paused, his voice lowering as he responded. I like being around her. I don't want to be away from her. When I can't see her, I get annoyed and angry. It makes me anxious. And? Hyung-sik prompted, sensing there was more. When I saw her injuries, it drove me crazy. Even more than how I felt during my concert in Germany 2 years ago, Ji Sehun confessed. Hyung-sik blinked in surprise. The concert in Germany? The one during the blizzard, when everything was delayed and the acoustics were a mess. Even more than that? Ji Sehun nodded. Yes. It's pretty serious. Hyung-sik was silent for a moment, processing. Wow. I don't want her to go anywhere without me. I want her to only think of me and focus on me. I don't want anyone else to see her, or even have her step outside, although I know that's impossible, Ji Sehun continued, his voice growing more intense. To be honest, I don't want her face to heal. If she were an object, I'd spend everything I have just to make her mine. Even after losing all my assets, I think I'd be happy just knowing she belongs to me. Hayeon stared at him, speechless. All my life, the most important things to me were my cello and my hands, Ji Sehun said. But now, I like her more than any of that. I already liked touching and holding her, but now I want her all to myself. But the only thing I have to offer is money. Ji Sehun paused, letting out a sigh. I wish she were more like me. Tell me, how can I make Kim Hayeon mine? Hayeon sat back, quietly absorbing his words. This must be really bothering him for him to open up like this, he thought. Sehun, it's because you never properly learned how to date someone. Actually, no, you never had to learn in the first place. How did you ask her out? Hayeon asked, arms folded. In bed, Ji Sehun answered awkwardly. Hayeon's eyes widened. In bed? Wait. Did you too? I gave her my wallet, Ji Sehun interjected. Hayeon stared at him, stunned. What? Why in the hell would you give her your wallet? And there, of all places? I wanted to give her whatever she wanted, so I just handed it to her, Ji Sehun explained, sounding almost defensive. Hayeon rubbed his temples, exasperated. Sehun, listen to me. What you're feeling right now. That's called love. He leaned forward, his tone more serious now. Thank you for joining us on this incredible adventure. If you enjoyed what you watched, please consider liking, subscribing, and ringing that notification bell. Your comments mean the world to us and help us improve. The next episode promises even more excitement and unexpected twists, so stay tuned as we embark on this thrilling journey together. Keep the anticipation alive, and we'll catch you in the next episode.